I'm Sawyer, and you're listening to Our House, A to Z.
What's up, everybody?
Hey.
Welcome back to A House.
I actually like that.
A House.
No, Zachary.
It's a house.
A house. A to Z house. Our house. A to Z.
Yep.
Here we are.
Here we are, guys. Yeah, it's been a crazy week. So
it's been a crazy week, and many of you heard that on Sunday, which I thought we were keeping that a secret because you said you didn't want everybody to know, and then you told everybody, including everybody online, about your Johnny story and your blackout and your head hit.
You know what? It was a good sermon illustration in the moment, so I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna throw it in. So I think the Lord gives us experiences to use as sermon illustrations.
I think that's definitely how you live your life, but you dropped that sermon illustration and then ran out the door to a funeral and left me bamboozled with everybody who had questions about the more specifics.
Yeah, I apologize. I apologize to you. I just apologize to Haley for the same thing. She's like, yeah, everybody was like freaking out. Like,
I know,
what's wrong?
Babe. Everybody loves you. Isn't that so nice?
So loved.
Do you feel like and it was also his birthday. It was so nice. So many cards and
thank
food.
you. Thank you to everybody.
I want to say thank you to the people who gift you with food because that benefits me every time too, which is nice.
Amen.
Yeah.
And I do. I feel very loved and like I'm going to gain a lot of weight.
You are.
People were literally, Jamal baked me a cake.
And you were eating it.
Like a gluten-free cake with molten chocolate on it. It was like, is this for real? Like,
you were eating it at 9 o'clock in the morning.
I felt really good about myself.
Mm-hmm. So there's
thank
that.
You, Jamal.
What else? How else was your weekend?
Amazing.
Good.
I want to say you are such a good gift giver, and
I'm actually a terrible gift giver.
No,
so.
I want to talk about how sacrificial my wife is.
Oh my goodness!
Because she sensed the sparkle of interest in me. Which, by the way, this is how good of a husband I am. I was
Let's tell him about it.
Yeah, come on, go ahead, set the table. So paint the picture. So I was not going to push for this. There are a lot of things that I choose not to push for.
You've casually mentioned it many a time.
Not many a times. I've said that I am a little fascinated about the whole beekeeping thing.
Right.
But my wife, for anybody who doesn't know, is absolutely petrified of bees.
Yeah, really just anything that stings in
Anything
general.
that stings.
Including scorpions. But more so flying, stinging things.
Sure. So we're all hoping that you don't make it to that point in the tribulation when the flying, stinging things come out. You know.
I'm sorry, what? I didn't read this part.
Ashley's hoping for the pre-trib rapture that she's going to be taken to heaven. So anyway, yes, just... You got me like the beehive, the beekeeping kit with the like 2 hives, the stackable boxes, and I just think it's the coolest thing ever. So I'm super psyched about it.
I'm trying to be excited about it. I am in small ways, but I'm also very nervous about it. But it's
I'm
fine.
going to let you decide where we can put it.
Well, I think
on our property.
I think we're going to have to do some research into finding out where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
I think there's ideal locations.
Yeah.
But we'll find out.
Super
and
excited.
I just hope, pray for our bees. Pray that they live next spring when we give this a shot.
Because apparently that's like an epidemic among bees.
That they die. Everybody says their hives die.
I heard that it has to do with where people are getting plants and flowers, and that the big box hardware stores they have genetically modified plants and flowers for hardiness. But the problem is, and this is literally the words that were used in the article I read, they're confusing the bee populations. There's something in how the organic matter is modified that confuses the bee as it's trying to pollinate. And so they kind of wander off and get lost and die and stuff.
It's terrible.
It is weird. It's very weird. I don't understand it, but I have a lot of research to do. Bees are fascinating.
You have a lot. He's asked me a million questions about this the beehive and all these facts, but I actually don't know the answer to anything. I'm like, you're going to have to do some research on it.
But you do so much research before you ever buy
anything.
anything. I do the research after. I'm like, this looks cool. I'm going to buy it, and then I'm going to watch 20 YouTubes on what it's actually for.
That's true.
So.
That's true. But I didn't want to dive. That's a big hole to dive into, the bee thing. So.
Fair.
You have lots of time until the spring to do that.
Very excited about that.
Anyway, that'll be fun. And that'll be great for our garden. So that's exciting.
Yeah. So my birthday was great, and yes. And then the week, the week was weird. The week leading up to it was weird.
You'll have to hear more about that from the sermon from yesterday.
And just continue to keep the families in prayer that are going through loss right now. We've got a lot of those in the church. And honestly, getting hit that hard with so many deaths all in a row, it has kind of a cool effect on people who are filled with the Spirit and are believers, because it forces us to say, Lord, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, what are you doing? And I need a new perspective of this. I can't look at death upon death upon death like in the traditional view. I need to have heaven's eyes on this. And that's been a really cool thing for me too.
Yeah.
In this.
Yeah, I think just trying to see it as, instead of loss, I think we can all, because we say we lost so-and-so, we lost so-and-so. And it's true. But, we always talk about what heaven gained. And I feel like it's a great reminder of how much of just a quick breath our life is here on earth, but how much greater is what we have ahead of us.
Absolutely.
And just really to change the perspective. So I think
absolutely, even
in the midst of the hardship of funerals and these memorial services and all that, it helps change your perspective on,
sure does,
on all of it. And, increases gratitude and gratefulness for what you do have in the moment. So
amen.
So it was good. All right. So today is going to be interesting because we did an interview of a wonderful, wonderful girl, Ashley Moniz, who oversees Rise Counseling here at the church. And that is the clinical, we talk about it a little bit in this podcast. That's the clinical counseling arm of the Freedom Center here at His Providence. So it's really exciting. There's 7 clinical counselors that work underneath her covering there. And it's a great thing that the Lord has done and put together. She is a mom of 4. She is married to a wonderful man, Tiago, and they're just a great couple and a great family and part of the HPC family here. And so,
and they've given so much to merge, Absolutely. So it's cool.
Absolutely. And so I know we've had so many conversations with her over the years, and she just loves coming shoulder to shoulder with the church because as a clinical counselor, and I've heard this said many a time from clinical counselor, is that some of the greatest success in counseling that they do is when the Lord's a part of it. So it's cool that they get to be here and be a part of it, and we're excited for that. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. It's actually a 2-parter. So you're going to hear the first half of this interview this week, and then next Friday, you're going to hear the second half.
Yes.
And it's really cool because the second half is going to be more like tools and hands-on situations. So you have that to look forward to for next Friday. So enjoy this podcast, guys. All right, podcast listeners, you are in for it today. We have a fabulous treat for you.
Yeah.
In the form of Miss Ashley Moniz.
Yes.
Welcome. She is a longtime listener of our house podcast, which is fantastic.
That true? You've been listening?
Don't make me say it. Long time listener.
Okay.
First time guest.
I like it.
Perfect.
I like it.
And I was actually thinking about it because a few weeks ago, or maybe even 2 months ago by now, we did a podcast on childhood hurt and wounds and kind of about the need for clinical counseling and things that are available that have kind of been maybe for a long time seen as, what's the word? I can't think of the word. I'm not good with vocab.
You're doing good.
No, what's the word?
I'm trying to figure out what you're looking for.
Like,
and I'll tell you what the word is.
Like
marginalized?
No, not marginalized, but kind of like poo-pooed kind of.
Okay.
What's a better word for that?
Stigma?
Yeah, maybe there's a stigma. See?
I don't know.
I knew you could
is that what you're going for?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going for. Like the stigma or a stigma around it.
Like if you're going to see a counselor, there must be something terribly wrong with you.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Once or twice.
Yeah. So like, can we just like take a couple seconds up front and like make that go away? Like, what do you say to people when people are like, well, I don't want like to be labeled as the person that has to go see a counselor?
I think normalizing it is probably one of the most important things that I have to do, but I think everyone can do.
Yeah.
Because if there was like a way to do that with everyone, then we would normalize it. I think the younger generation is doing a better job of it, to be honest with you.
For sure.
A lot of clients in their 20s are like, okay, I get my skin checked, I get my yearly physical.
Yep.
And now they're like, and I should check in with, I see my pastor.
Yeah.
I go to church. I need to check in with my mental health as well.
Physical, spiritual, mental, all of those things.
Absolutely.
So
normalize it.
Yeah, exactly. And I had texted Ashley earlier because last week or 2 weeks ago, it was National Mental Health Awareness Day.
And it's October 10th.
Is it October 10th? Okay, so it's not too long ago. I remember seeing that and kind of feeling one of two things, which was, first of all, that it was downsized to a national day where so is pancakes and donuts and coffee, and we have all these National Dog Day and National whatever it is. There's something every day that we're celebrating.
My concern is we're going to run out of days if we start doing things like pancakes, and donuts and
so all you're saying is
cream.
Something at some point is going to feel marginalized. That's all I know.
Well, we're going to run out of days, and then somebody's going to get the last leap year day, and that's it. And then there's going to be
and then they're only recognized every 4 years.
I think they're doubling up on the days already.
Are they?
I think, I think they already have to.
So like Canadian Boxing Day is also, like American Shuffleboard Day or something?
I wonder what mental health day is shared with. I hope it's donuts.
It's good for everybody's mental health.
Somehow they do go together. So anyway,
I remember seeing
huge.
that and kind of thinking like, all right, so awesome. Like the awareness is out there. I think it's great. Everybody's trying to normalize it. Like you said, everybody's trying to normalize it now as be conscious of like your mental health and how can we be just as concerned with our physical and mental and spiritual and all of these things. But at the same time, I'm thinking, can everybody actually do that? Like,
How?
Do we even have enough clinicians in the world for everybody to actually have a clinical counselor?
Mm-hmm.
No. And I don't think that's the answer, actually.
So what is the answer?
I think that what you guys are doing and what we're doing together is part of the answer, that you start from the inside out and not try to solve it all over the internet first and then shrink it down.
That's so good. So you're saying people do the WebMD thing for mental health too and not just like physical health?
Yeah, or to see the mental health awareness post and think that solves something. I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer starts within our families, our community, our church, and then we build that language and those answers and that normalizing out from there and start to reach more and more people.
I love it. Don't wait for a crisis. I feel like that. Ugh. We always tell people that about church, like coming to church and belonging to a church. People wait. Like they're like, okay, as long as I'm nominally a part of a church, then I have a place to go when things get really hard.
Right.
And then you have really people who are incredibly unhealthy by the time they're spiritually unhealthy and actually unhealthy in a million other ways by the time the crisis happens. So when they come to church, it is literally like a triage situation. Whereas for people who are regularly maintained, it's just general maintenance.
Yes.
We say that for marriages.
Yes.
Go to a marriage group. It was the same stigmata. It was like, oh, like really? Oh, you guys, is everything okay? You're going to a marriage group? Are you guys like, is there something? But it's like, no, we are just changing the oil. Yeah. So
huge. So many people come in and I'm like, you should have been here years ago.
Right.
You should have came here as a teen. You should have came here when this all started.
I know.
So this is actually a really good reason for us having you on today is like, how many people have you met with in the last 2 months?
160.
Okay.
Ish.
Now, out of those 160, first of all, that's amazing.
That's a lot of people.
That's amazing.
Maybe 160 appointments in the last 2 months. Not all different people.
No, that's good. Well, yeah, but some of those, it's a different person every time they come in. So, the reason I want to ask you, I think you're a perfect person to ask with that kind of volume. Is there anything consistent that you're seeing that you could, if you could throw a blanket out and do a broad brush over all of our listeners and say, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is what's happening culturally. This is where people are at. These are some indicators of common unhealthy patterns or paradigms. Like, what are we looking for here?
I think it's very compartmentalized, and people are, like you said, coming in when it's a crisis. They're coming in once it's already a mess, and can you fix this mess, whatever that might be in my life. Sure. And so I don't think people have a lot of basic understanding and awareness of how their thoughts and their behaviors are tied together. I don't think they're paying attention to generationally what might be handed down. And I don't mean anything outlandish. I mean, I don't know, how did your parents handle stress? Yeah. Like, did you know when your mom was having a stressful day?
Not well.
Probably not as well as maybe our new 20-somethings are hopefully learning to do that, because it was brushed under the rug decades ago. But I think just paying attention to that, I think a lot of people are coming in and they don't understand how everything's related. They're like, well, I have my marriage and it has its problems, and I have my work life and that has its problems, and I have my self-care and I don't know how to do that, and I don't take care of myself, and everything seems separate. Yeah. And so I think when we start to pull that together, which I don't think clinical counselors should do alone. Right. I think that's why we need that community of everyone working together to try to pull those pieces together.
Yeah.
It's huge.
That is good. One thing I wanted to ask you was maybe to give like a 30-second definition to each of those things, because at the Freedom Center here at the church, we have these different compartments, really, we're departments where there's pastoral counseling, and we have like yielding and deliverance, and then the Rise Center is the clinical counseling piece of that, and what the difference is, and when people need to know when they need to go where. Like, when do I need clinical counseling, or maybe I just need to kind of go talk to somebody like a pastor on staff to work through this situation.
Yeah, I think the vision, and you guys correct me if you pictured it differently, I think in our early conversations, the idea was that it wouldn't all be separate, right? People can get the separate somewhere. They can go to their pastor. Right. They can go find some random counselor. Maybe they've heard of deliverance and yielding and they do that somewhere else because their church doesn't offer it. I think the vision was to keep that together. And I think that's what's been really amazing is that with a signed release, a client can come in and think they're looking for clinical counseling, and after maybe a session or two, have a conversation about the need for deliverance or the opportunity for yielding. They may start with pastoral, and then you see something that's maybe unsafe. I think safety was probably one of our bigger conversations that we were seeing a lot of people who are worried about hurting themselves. Substance abuse can be really tricky, I think. So to pull together a team for that and say, when do we need to up this to clinical? And then when do we need to step down and say, you know what, you've got this clinical stuff, you're safe. Let's lean on other people in your community or on your team, like your pastor or church community.
That's so great. I think that's huge. So anything that you would say, okay, so how long have you been in the game?
15 years of doing counseling.
Okay, that's perfect. Over the last 15 years, have you seen, because I'm like 100,000 foot guy, like I'm always looking at this thing probably to a fault, like the bigger picture, the forest instead of the trees. Have there been cultural shifts or generational shifts or, you know, whatever it is that you would say, okay, here's what we're dealing with by and large, far and away, this is an issue, whereas maybe 5 years ago it wasn't even on the radar. Is there anything like that?
I think you might answer it similarly of what you see in the church. I think that we have seasons. I think we're embarking on a really tough season after a pandemic. I think we're definitely going to see a mental health spike in terms of needs. So I think it's been seasonal. Honestly, I'm optimistic maybe to a fault sometimes that I think that it's getting better. I think the stigma's decreasing. I think more people are coming for counseling who really are trying to be proactive and aren't waiting for that crisis. I think we're starting to see more and more of that again with the younger people. I think it's definitely cultural maybe too. I think where we live helps. That people are starting to talk about it more. Sometimes it's, I don't know, debunking some of the stuff they've heard. As long as we get them in the door to get their help, I'm happy. But some of the stuff they're finding on the internet's a little wacky.
Sure.
But I'll take it.
I find that hard to
really
believe.
Like across the board, really anything.
Now, what I find on the internet is totally normal. Completely, grounded.
One of the things I was going to ask you, and I was thinking about it when Zac was saying that, and you said it's probably similar to what you're seeing in even pastoral counseling within the church, is the depression and anxiety stuff. We've done podcasts on this before, but really thinking, I want to give hope to people who are in this boat right now, because I feel like a lot of people are in this boat of either the panic attack, anxiety, depression. And I know those are like three different things, but for some reason it feels like everybody you encounter is dealing with it in some shape or form. Clinically, is there hope?
Yes.
Is there an end in sight for people who are dealing with it, who have felt like, I've dealt with this for decades, my mom dealt with it for decades, her mom committed suicide because she was depressed, and this is exactly what we're seeing all the time.
Yes. And 100% yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that any of us would do what we do if we didn't believe that they can get better.
And I think that that's one of the stigmas that's associated with clinical counseling. It's like, okay, well, once you have a therapist, you're just going to go to her for years, and she's just going to keep helping you along, but you never really come to the other side of something. And I don't believe that. And I feel like that is one of the stigmas with counseling. But a lot of times why you stay with a counselor is there's a trusted relationship there. There's a rapport that's been created that has gone on for many years, and it's kind of working through different situations as they approach it, as they come up in your life,
Right. And so I say that we'll use the situations as examples to work through, but there's a bigger picture of the skills that you're learning here.
Right.
And you want people to get to the point that they can use those skills on their own. So when I eventually start working out more, I might start with a personal trainer and have them teach me the things that I need to do.
Tools.
The tools.
Actually,
and the
mental,
skills.
Emotional, spiritual, and physical.
Oh, wow. Wait, what are we doing for physical health here at the church?
I feel like this is an intervention.
we have all the other things. Okay.
One day.
So here's the thing too, because so far, a lot of this conversation, and as pastors here, when we're talking about working with people, ministering to people, it's very much, it can quickly gravitate towards how do we deal with the one with the immediate need. But one thing that I love about having you in here with us today is you oversee a crew of how many counselors?
7
counselors. And even in that group of 7, there's a myriad of fortes and niches or niches. I don't know.
Specialties.
What did I say?
Say specialties. That helps.
So, and I think that's really cool. But as a church, Ashley and I have this heart to not just to minister to people, but to minister to ministers and to make sure that we're calling people up into their giftings.
Yes.
Now, you said just a minute ago, that sort of secular adage that everybody needs a therapist and even therapists need therapists, right? And so when you take a lay of the land, you say, well, there aren't enough therapists to go around. But I believe that as believers, there are a lot of people who have a shepherd's heart. They have the gift of the great counselor, right? The wonderful counselor. Wonderful counselor.
Mighty God, Holy One.
Yeah. Emmanuel. Anyway, was it Amy Grant?
Emmanuel.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Was it Amy Grant? Bless her heart.
Come on.
Somebody preach. So the point is that there are a lot of people that have this shepherd's heart and who actually are incredibly good listeners and maybe have some of the raw materials to be what we'll call lay counselors.
Yes.
They're never going to get a degree in it. They're never going to have an office. They're never going to be clinical, but they could actually be operating in the trenches with a lot of people. What would you say, as you lead a team of counselors, what would you say to an entire church of people where maybe every row there's somebody there who would actually be phenomenal in that capacity?
I would say, aren't we all so thankful for those people?
Amen. Yes.
Aren't we so thankful for them?
Yes.
Amen.
It can look back and pause for a minute and think of the people who have stepped forward, and it's not a counselor.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's been on your bench that you've called up when you needed or stepped up and the Lord put them there for you for that moment.
Yeah.
So I would say, amen, that we have them and watch for them. And I think when we talk about mental health awareness, where this started, that's kind of the stuff that comes to mind more than a social media post for me is, how do you be that person for someone else? How do you watch for that person for someone else and say, hey, you didn't notice, but...
Yeah.
And how would you? If your job was to train like a counseling 101 people who are only going to get that counseling, only going to get that teaching, what would you say to somebody who says, I want to be a better listener, I want to offer better advice, I want to be able to be a lay counselor?
Practice on your family members. No, I'm just kidding.
Families love that.
Oh, yes.
Diagnosed my whole family.
That's so great.
They're so appreciative.
They're so happy.
Especially your teenage daughter.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's thrilled.
She's so happy that I've diagnosed her and just really been there to listen.
Bless her heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you watch for it in yourself. I think the people that want to actually listen and actually be a support to someone will do that.
Okay.
I think the people that are going through a season that they're maybe caught up in some of their own stuff won't do that.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think we've all been that to people, and we've all had people who step up and do that. I think listening, normalizing, meeting someone where they're at are some of the basics. What I hear that doesn't work is often telling someone that they have to do it the way you did it.
Oh.
Right? That's not listening.
Nope.
Or helpful, usually.
It's called projecting.
It is.
Even the good stuff. Usually we only villainize the projectors of their bad things, but like people who project their glory days on somebody, it's your good thing is now somebody's bad thing.
Yeah, can I have my own glory days, please?
Come on. Yes, you can.
Awesome.
So, no, that's so good. And wow. Now, so we had Terrace who did a training for our staff on suicide awareness and prevention and stuff like that. It was so good. Were you here for that or no?
No.
Okay.
But we were just talking about it too.
So, and you said normalizing. We opened up with normalizing. What are some trigger words of like not to say? Or, you just said don't project, but how would you normalize? How do you, even if you can't identify, how do you make somebody not feel like they're insane for something that you can't identify with?
Tell me more about what you mean by that question. You do it like that.
Yeah.
You ask them more questions.
Yeah,
right.
That's great.
Right?
That is good. No, that's what Jesus did.
Ask more questions.
Ask more questions is probably the big piece. And I think if we're going to touch on some of the more clinical things like suicide and depression and anxiety and panic attacks, I think that we could definitely go too far with normalizing.
Yeah.
My sweet, sweet teens all over the world are so normalized that everybody's depressed and everybody's got anxiety.
Right.
And even suicide, I think we can go so far that...
Absolutely.
With too much talk and not enough teaching or without the right foundation, I think it can be dangerous. So
there's the classic pendulums.
Yeah.
To be very clear for anybody listening, we're not normalizing the problem, we're normalizing the treatment. We want to normalize the stigma that we opened up with is attached to the treatment. It's attached to the counseling. You see a counselor, you have a shrink, you talk to a therapist. That's the treatment. That's the thing that could potentially bring healing for what would otherwise be unaddressed toxicity in somebody's life.
Yes.
So, no, we're not normalizing the fear or the anxiety or the panic attacks or the depression. We're normalizing, hey, what should be normal is we should go talk to somebody about that and get help.
Get the right help at the right time.
It's good.
Sometimes I wonder if like part of, we've talked before about how this culture shift to social media and where you have all these relationships and people have, you have these teens, 20-year-olds that have 1,000, 2,000 followers, quote unquote friends on social media, but that there's this like dearth of real relationship.
Yeah.
And so much I feel like of even pastoral counseling is what you had mentioned, Ashley, is just a listening ear. Somebody who's like hearing you and not judging you but genuinely caring for your well-being. And part of why I feel like so many people are even pushing towards counseling is because there is this lack of real relationship with trustworthy, godly influences and people in your life. And so they find a safe place in a counselor, which is a beautiful thing, but it's almost like, all right, where, even as the church, how can we step up and say, we can take more of this on than, as like a body of believers, take more of this on than the only person you can go and sit with and who can like really hear you and understand and give you Christ's wisdom on this situation is going to be a clinical counselor.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
I think that's huge. I think that it's confusing for people.
Yeah.
I flip-flop. Sometimes I'm like, forget all the social media.
Yeah.
Anything clinical has no place there because it needs to be authentic. And and then the other part of me is like, no, we need to take over social media with the real stuff to just offset all the crazy that's out there.
Yes.
And I can't say, because I'm not as young as some people, I mean, there have definitely been some stories from some young people who have built connections who wouldn't have otherwise through COVID had some. And so they have made some friends electronically, which is weird to me.
Yeah.
So, but I'll meet them where they're at and try to build from there and talk about what relationships, why they are beneficial, what we need from them, how we're wired, how God intended us to really work together and be together. But I can't take away from some of these stories I've heard from people who that's all they had for. They went from being out there in the world and then they had no one, nothing except their parents. And these poor teens are like, this isn't good. This isn't good.
That's fair.
So I think it's hard to navigate all of it. I think there's definitely room for people that they're looking for an ear. They're looking for a relationship and something genuine. And I think that's another beautiful thing about Rise being here, because I think a lot of people are coming, they trust the church, they trust you, they trust the Lord. They want to know that when I walk into a room with a counselor, they are going to be a fellow believer. They're not going to say anything wild and crazy.
Right.
Usually.
And you guys aren't you're not a Christian counseling outfit, but you're clinical counselors who are all Christians.
Yes.
Right?
Now,
That's how we say it.
What's the difference there? Like, what would make a Christian outfit instead of an outfit of Christians?
I don't know. I think there's a special certificate you get as a Christian counselor. So I don't hold that, and none of us do. So I don't feel like we can technically say that.
There's classified biblical counseling.
Oh.
That is even different.
I don't know if I have a Christian pastor's certificate. It might just be like a normal pastor. Not even I don't know.
You're anything but a normal pastor, babe.
Oh, wow, thanks. No, I love this, and I think it's so important, and I really, I think the awareness piece, and I even think having the Freedom Center here and hearing stories about it and people talking about it, it has generated a really healthy buzz or fever where people are like, oh, I know what that is. Oh, and people are making referrals and that sort of thing. And I guess I do wonder how do you, and maybe this is redundant, but how do you know when somebody does need
more?
Yeah, professional help.
Some easier indicators is when it is safety. I think if they're feeling unsafe or you feel unsafe, even clinically,
okay,
I've been I don't feel okay with this person walking out of my office today. I don't know if I could sleep tonight because I don't feel like they've been able to promise me that they won't hurt themselves. So I think when we're talking about someone's safety, that might be, hey, we need to take a step up. And I think when you've seen, which you probably have, when you see people come through and you're able to see the patterns in what they're doing or the repeats of what they're doing, and they haven't been able to catch those patterns and see that, they might need a little more.
Yeah.
Or when
Agreed.
there's like even a pastoral counseling and I feel like and there's not really any ground taken almost, or a lot of times you can see like immediate growth or change, but then there's kind of like a relapse in it, then maybe it could be something like that needs a little bit.
And I think we do that as clinical counselors too.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we have to reflect and say this person's not making the progress or the growth that we all anticipated.
Blockages somewhere. And that's true. So like one thing we've seen as we've watched all these different things sort of evolve and blossom is how spiritual wounds play into and give rise to, psychological wounds. And then it goes back and forth. It's like a bad cycle that sort of self-perpetuates. And so the healing process is walking backwards down that road, which means that you have to repass some of these fractured places, both in your spirit, where maybe you are talking to a pastor or you are meeting with somebody for yielding sessions, but then you have breakthrough in an area which exposes, oh, wait a minute. No, there's a psychological issue that's part of this too. And my brain's been working this way and I need to talk to somebody through that. And so I love it because I think it is a little bit of a tennis match where we're kind of lobbing back and forth to different issues, different problems. And sometimes it's the person actually setting up appointments. And sometimes it's been just sitting down with some of your counselors and some of our pastors and just discussing some of the issues from both fronts. So one perspective is going to be addressing the spiritual stuff and another one is going to be addressing the psychological stuff. And then when you merge the two, you find healing, hopefully, for somebody.
And isn't that a beautiful thing when everyone can work together?
Yeah, come on.
Guys, I hope you feel like you've just been left with a serious cliffhanger, because you have. Whether or not you know it, you have. And we really do hope you enjoyed this first part of this interview, and we loved it. I felt like it was so much great information.
Yeah.
And I hope it really blessed you guys, and we look forward to next week in part 2.
We'll see you then.
This is Messer. And I'm Willa. This is our house from A to Z. Thanks for coming over.